In this presentation of supporting an 18-game regular season, player safety has been mentioned, but it needs to be discussed in more detail because the league, the NFL, continues to keep player safety as a top priority. With that being said, one may ask, why then consider expanding the regular season? Well, in our opinion, we're not really expanding the regular season, but more so converting two preseason games to regular season games. So instead of having a 4-game preseason and 16-game regular season, we'll have now 2 preseason games and 18 regular season games. But it's important to keep player safety in mind. Even in the preseason, serious injuries occur. The league has already lost one of its top players, wide receiver Jordy Nelson of the Packers, who suffered a torn ACL and is out for the season in just the second preseason game that occurred. A non-contact injury, by the way, but nonetheless a major injury to one of the league's top players. And that occurred in preseason. So why would we push to have 2 additional regular season games where players are now playing a little bit more? Well, we have confidence in our track record with promoting player safety. What's been done in recent years? Practices and training camp schedules have been modified. So there's less full contact in practices and training camps than previously. So no helmets, no pads, and some of the practices, or in a few of the practices, helps players to save their bodies considering the demands of the regular season games, how intense the physicality of the sport is. So now there's less wear and tear with the combination of hard practices and then hard games. We've reduced some of that wear and tear during the practice phase of preparation. We've also invested mightily in the technology of our helmets so that the concussion situation, which is very serious, we're noticing the long-term impacts. We're knowledgeable. We're no longer ignorant to the long-term impacts of repeated concussions, minor or major concussions. So we want the technology of our helmets to be as safe as possible, and we're investing in that to continue to research and make advancements so that that helmet technology lends itself to being as safe as possible for our players. Also, rules changes to protect our players. Tackling and blocking. Those are the types of things that have been emphasized as far as proper techniques, and also limiting the certain areas where players can be tackled, especially defenseless players who cannot or who are not in a position to protect themselves, cannot be struck in certain places, especially near the head and neck area, to avoid some of those serious injuries. And there's more to be discussed there as well, as far as the safety of the knees as well. But at the end of the day, we're making strides in that area also. We've discussed or mentioned concussions briefly, but now there's concussion protocol in place. If a player is believed to have had a concussion or potentially had a concussion, they're removed from the game and tested and cannot return until they are fully cleared by doctors. In line with that, we now have an independent concussion specialist at every game, a person, a trained professional not affiliated with either team or with the medical staff of either team so that they can objectively view the game, identify players who potentially may have had a concussion, and remove that player from the game. Referees have also been educated regarding the symptoms of concussions and head injuries so that they can identify when a player has potentially suffered a concussion, and they can exercise their authority to remove that player from the game as well. All of these things related to concussions help us to protect players from themselves. Players often want to play regardless, and it's in their DNA, so to speak, from a football standpoint, to push through and play despite injury. Well, we don't want that to occur as it relates to head injuries. The impact, long-term impact, has been identified to be very, very dangerous and serious to the well-being and quality of life of players after repeated head injuries. So we want to protect players from themselves, and so there are numbers of people that are viewing the game to make sure that these players are not playing with the ill effects of a concussion, and they're not they won't play until they're fully cleared. The league is also funding seriously injured former players. There's a fund in place to provide the necessary health care for these players, and also make sure that they have the necessary things in life to have a high quality of life despite the serious health issues possibly related to the game that they're suffering. So that shows that we're not only concerned with players while they're playing, but also after they've retired. We have the best interests of the players currently and in the future in mind, and we care about the league cares about its players. And so by the number of things we've just discussed, that shows that we do have concern for the players. But again, the question still remains, why more games? Why more regular season games? Well, the additional regular season games results in additional revenue not only for the owners but for the players, because now, as discussed earlier, there's a potential 12% increase in national TV money revenue, because just by expanding or converting 2 preseason games to 2 regular season games, what does that piece of the pie for the players mean? Well, we could expand the rosters, add more players, so that now there are more players available to be substituted in and out, so that players are not pushing themselves to the limit even more physically. So now you have additional bodies in place to help decrease some of that wear and tear on some players. We've also discussed how options for the schedule layout. Could there be additional bye weeks? Maybe 1 or 2 additional bye weeks. So imagine having a regular season that would be a little bit longer, but with more rest in the midst of the regular season. So instead of having 1 bye week, you might have 2 bye weeks, maybe even 3 bye weeks. Imagine how much that would promote health and safety of the players if you had once every 7 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks or so, you had a bye week to kind of rejuvenate your body and rest up from the normal aches and pains of a regular season. Well, if we're reducing preseason, would it be appropriate now to reduce the training camps? That's an option as well, to kind of make up for the more intense regular season games that would now be in place. There are all types of options here that need to be discussed, and the league and its owners have a willingness to listen to the players' concerns regarding the additional regular season games and discuss how it makes sense for everyone involved to go to the regular season games of go to 18 regular season games, but also maintain player health and safety as a high priority. Well, the NFL's popularity is off the charts, and the demand for football is at an all-time high. The league, the NFL, and its owners sees growth potential by way of an 18-game regular season schedule. Obviously, there are options to explore and discuss, but replacing meaningless preseason games of little interest to the fans with nationally televised regular season games is a sound business decision that can be achieved without unnecessary risk to the health and well-being of our players. So what do we want to do at this point? We, as the league, want to work hand in hand with the players to grow the game while continuing to maintain player safety as a high priority. Let's work together to do this by discussing how we can make the 18-game regular season happen to the benefit of the players, the owners, the league, and most importantly, the fans of the game. Let's discuss this.